Hello and welcome to Dynamics Update. Today is also one of the interview episodes. With me, as usual, I have Gustav Sumblad. Hello, Gustav.
Hello, Johan. How are you tonight?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Great as well.
Yes. So this interview today is actually something that we've been preparing for a really long time. I think it's been like almost 8 months or something. We met the person this summer when we were in Slovenia at Dynamics Minds, and she had a session where she talked about performance testing and automating performance testing for large implementations where they have a lot of transactions and stuff. And we were a bit fascinated because at least me, I wanted to know more about how do we do the automated testing and so on. So that's why we talked to her and we invited her to podcast. And then Christmas came in between and summer and stuff. So it didn't really happen until now. So with us today, we have Liese-Marie Heyns. Hello.
Hi, Johan, and hi, Gustav. Thank you so much for inviting us to come and speak to you and for your persistence to get us on the show.
Yes. And with her is her colleague, Gary Cook. Hi, Gary.
Hi, nice to meet you guys. First time meeting you, and we're looking forward to having a quick chat.
Yes, that will be great. That will be great.
Nice to have you.
Please introduce yourself. I think we'll start with Liese-Marie.
Awesome. So, like you said, my name is Liese-Marie Heyns, and I'm proudly South African. I got my degree in industrial engineering in 2013, and then I did my honors in journalism. And ever since then, I've been working in the world of Microsoft Dynamics. I've actually only worked on AX 2012 R3 and then on D365, but I worked on a very highly customized version of AX for the diamond industry, where actually performance testing and designing for performance was also quite a big topic. And my key background is in the supply chain side of things, manufacturing and retail.
Very cool.
Yes, and Gary, how about you?
Hi, I'm Gary Cook. I live in South Africa, but I'm proudly English. I'm almost like an expat. I've lived in South Africa for 13 years now. I've been working for 38 years in the IT industry. Started off as a dev and now have progressed to a technical solution architect, tech lead, BA, a bit of everything really. Been working in Dynamics for 13 years. When I moved to South Africa, I started working Dynamics, predominantly in the CE and Power Platform space, but due to performance testing, I've sort of merged over into sort of the F&O and the fully integrated Dynamics ecosystem.
Very nice. It's usually the other way around nowadays, where we have a lot of F&O people coming into CE because, I mean, whether we like it or not, we're kind of a part of CE in Dataverse. So it's nice to hear someone going the other way.
The other way, yes, correct.
Refreshing. So, I mean, Liese-Marie, when we first met, it was in Dynamics Minds in Slovenia. You held a very nice presentation about the, that was a specific client, right? That was a field use case. Maybe we can start discussing that because you had a lot of, I think, very cool like metrics, but also some very good learnings from the science of doing performance testing, right? Because it's a very tricky area and it's very client specific in many cases, right? Everyone wants, we need to do performance testing. Okay, but like how? What do we need to do? Maybe some takeaways from that.
Definitely. So performance testing isn't a new thing, and neither is incorporating that into your solution design. And I do think when people hear the term, they think, oh, okay, I've heard of it. I have, maybe some people have some experience, but what we've learned through the project that we've done for a very, very large client in the consumer packaged goods industry is that certain businesses and industries cannot afford not to make performance testing part of their plan when they are implementing an ERP and a CE solution. And because of the pace of their ordering cycle, the complexity of their business, and not even just thinking about it from a system or IT point of view, but the actual business processes that they have can make the entire landscape so complex that not investing in something like performance testing can really have a massive impact in your ability to validate that the solution is living up to your expectations. And
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think what I wanted to just add there is, for this specific client that we were working with, they actually went live with a pilot version of the solution and realized very quickly that their users were not having the same experience that they had on their previous system. And you think of it and you say, okay, maybe it's poor design. But if you think of a lot of these old ERP systems, there's been a lot of investment over years and years, as well as a lot of processes that work in the background. And if you move to a solution like D365, one of its key selling points is the fact that you've got immediate real-time data, right? And there's a bit of a pro and con of that. If something is real-time, it means that the processing is happening immediately, and that could have a massive impact on performance. And so I think moving into this new solution, they realized that we're not going to be able to take our other 8 businesses live, as well as that included South Africa, which is the largest part of their business, if we don't invest in performance testing and making sure that key parts of this solution is working as efficiently as possible.
It's very cool. I remember some metrics from that presentation. If I remember correctly, maybe Gary, you can fill in on the technical details as well, but there was order capturing happening on the CE side, and then those order lines were replicated over to F&O, right? And as you said, it's fun that you mentioned AX 2012 as well before, because I think that's one of the most customized solutions, apart from maybe AX 2009, and the AX sphere at least, when it was like a feature. But every problem then, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Johan, but basically every problem could be solved by just adding more CPU, adding more memory, work with the indexes. It was always kind of the same tools in your toolbox that you could apply to a performance issue. It was rarely that you went in and kind of rebuilt the process or did something else, because you could just throw more wood to the fire, right?
I mean, exactly. It was more of a brute force approach to fixing a performance issue. Yeah. I mean, I've been in situations where we have actually done performance tuning and so on, but I have also been in situations where it's like just more CPUs, more RAM, and more SSD drives, and that will fix the issue. No, it actually doesn't fix the issue. It just mitigates the issue.
Yeah. And then going from that to as you say, Liese-Marie, going from that to a modern cloud-based platform, especially using Dataverse and so forth, it's important to realize that these are two. In the end, it's all servers and data, of course, and data flowing all the way. But it's a new world, and there might be challenges that we haven't foreseen, and especially you can't really go in and tweak a lot of things underneath the hood, because
you're not in control of it.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
right. It's a black.
Yeah, everybody thinks Dynamics is software as a service, but it's also platform as a service. So that ability to understand what is going on at the database level and the CPU level is taken out of your hands now, and you rely on Microsoft to scale it accordingly. And it's only when you start pumping massive volumes of data in that you realize that the auto scaling and the auto indexing that is being done may not be the most efficient, so you have to start tweaking it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the thing here is that if you compare performance tuning on AX 2012, this is a completely different set of skills, because in most cases it will end up in a support case to Microsoft. So the whole trick of learning to performance tune is actually not to do the tuning. It's actually showing the support people that this is not our code. This is something else. Yeah. And being able to present your case in a very structured way, so that you can show them that, as you see here, the performance issue is not in one of our lines of code or in our customizations. It's actually somewhere else.
And that's another issue that we got involved with some of our performance testing, is when you start running at scale and you've decided to use a third-party ISV to fulfill that niche business process that you have, you're now relying on the ISV code and how have they coded the system from a performance perspective. So not only do you have to deal with Microsoft support, you now have to start dealing with ISV support potentially, because if you've downloaded a pricing ISV and suddenly you're pricing 100,000 order lines in an hour, they may not be able to deal with that volume.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because it's always been like this discussion when it comes to SaaS and PaaS and so forth about the burden of proof. Like who carries the burden of having to prove something is wrong, right? And it's always like it's a SaaS, so it's on Microsoft.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can share both sentiments, right? Because it's in the end, it's how you use it. It's not a platform that everyone uses exactly the same. It's quite the opposite.
Yes.
Everyone uses it differently. I think that's the main point. And I think that's what you brought up in your presentation as well, Liese-Marie, like how to tackle those things. Technically, I think Gary, me, and Johan, we can go on for like 4 hours here and just discuss like code tweaking. That could be a fun episode as well. But it's also about like going down to that level of detail and finding out those metrics and presenting them, right?
So maybe just to share some of the numbers around the system that we were testing here and just the sheer scale of it. There were around 20 third-party applications that were deployed, 11 ISVs, and on their peak trading days, they were capturing over 140,000 sales order lines, and half of that is captured in a single hour. Now, all of those transactions need to be synchronized between the CE system and finance and operations. And at multiple points in the system, there was data being transferred between these two systems. So you can just imagine the volumes of transactions. I mean, if we talk about breaking the internet, you can just imagine the pressure a solution like D365 is under when those volumes of transactions and updates are running between systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Was it DualWrite that did the replication between CE, or
Yes.
was it the integrator? Oh, DualWrite, yeah.
No, it was DualWrite. And just going back to what Liese-Marie was saying about the volumes, so those 140,000 sales order lines, we actually tested those across 350 concurrent user sessions. So during an hour, we had 350 user sessions running, creating all those sales order lines. And it goes back to what Liese-Marie said about the reason those orders were happening in a single hour of the day was they had a next day delivery cutoff, which was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So therefore, you can guarantee most of your orders are going to come in between 12 and 2 o'clock because everybody's trying to hit the deadline.
Yeah, exactly.
And if the system can't perform, those orders are lost. And because it's the retail industry, those orders are lost forever. So it's lost revenue. So it was very important that they could identify the distribution of their transactions during the day. So that's a key thing in performance testing. It's not just saying we do 140,000 sales order in a day and dividing it by 24. It's actually, you need to actually be able to analyze the transactional distribution during the day and then try and tailor your performance test to follow that curve.
Yeah, it's the peak testing, right? So you need to figure out the peak volume and then ensure that the system can bear the strain of that. And I understand the complexity here, like not only from a technical side, as you said, Gary, like making it work, but also coordinating. Because I would imagine that you found some issues in the beginning. Everything wasn't smooth, is my guess here at least. But it wasn't smooth in the beginning. This is a podcast, so you can't see them nodding and smiling, but I can relay that.
Maybe one story that I can share, and I mean, there was a lot of innovation that came through from Microsoft during the course of this project. But one of the things we picked up was the load planning workbench. I think some people might not even know, but there's a new version of that that's been deployed recently. The way it calculates what loads are being presented in the sales orders, it's been optimized in the background. And we actually were able to see the difference that made. And I was looking at some of the statistics on the runs that we had done. On the old version of it, where you had multiple users logging in, it was creating extreme strain on the system. And the thing that is also important is if you are putting strain on the system in one place, it's going to affect other business processes as well. So we saw load planning taking up to 7 minutes. And after the new load planning workbench was deployed, some filters were applied so that the data that is visible there is really limited to what is needed. It only runs for a number of seconds now. So the actual user experience is so much better. As well as the utilization of SQL is much better as well, which means that the overall impact on the system is much, much lower.
I mean, I would imagine that Microsoft would love having a project like this because, first of all, it's very high volumes. So it's a perfect way to test the system and verify if it works as it should, even the index optimizations parts and stuff. But it's also a very focused load. I mean, I'm guessing here that compared to that hour during the day where you received all of your orders, everything else is like almost nothing. But you still have to perform during that hour.
Yeah, well, you have to think it's a two-stage process in retail. It's like you've got your busiest hour, so you're processing like 80, 90,000 order lines in an hour at midday to meet your cutoff. What you then have to do is so that is your CE and your DualWrite performance. What you then have to do is at 10 o'clock at night, you have to pick, pack, load, and deliver.
Yep.
So that 70,000 order line, that performance moves to a completely different section. So we ended up having this 2-run cycle where we had the order entry cycle and the delivery performance test. But what we found when we analyzed the customer's data was we also tried to analyze what else happened during that period of time. And also, how does running an F&O month end, because how does that affect your order processing during the day? Because you can guarantee at month end, someone's running a tax calculation report or a payroll, something like that. And how does that then affect those things? So it wasn't just picking the worst hour in the day, it was picking the worst hour and then trying to overlay other processes that were identified, and especially trying to identify month-end processes that could affect that day-to-day process.
And maybe just to add to that, so when we started looking at, we call it a perfect storm. Originally, we were saying, what if we just pushed the highest volumes we could think of into the system? What is going to happen? And then we got some advice from Microsoft to say, look, if you're going to do this is going to become an extremely expensive system, and you're probably never going to use all of that capacity that you are going to say that you require. So let's look at realistic scenarios. And I think so Christmas is, as in a lot of retail businesses, one of their peak periods, but where they had this sort of perfect storm scenario is over the Easter weekend, where sales are incredibly high, but a month end is also right around the corner. And so they actually did have both of these processes happening very, very closely to each other. And we were actually able to help them make the decision to say, look, we need to do month end at almost just after midnight, so that we can prevent it having an impact on the sales process.
Yeah, that's a very makes sense as well. A little question on like the tools that you use to do this analysis, because as you say, Gary, it goes a little bit across systems. You have telemetry from F&O, telemetry from CE. You have all of these ISVs. I'm not sure if there are like external systems that are placing. You have integration layers as well. So without name dropping customers, maybe name drop some of the tools that you used to do this analysis.
So the original, so firstly, they were moving from a previous ERP. So we worked closely with their BI, not necessarily Power BI. We worked very closely with their BI teams to analyze the existing system data to get those volumes and the user interaction sort of during the day. But with regard to running the tests on Dynamics 365, the integrated F&O and CE, we basically, first of all, one thing that you have to get right with your performance testing is identifying your KPI, your performance metrics, and ensuring that they're actually reportable within the system. Because like Liese-Marie said, if a customer goes live with a pilot and they don't see the performance on the pilot, have you actually got the ability to performance test and report on metrics from the system as it stands, or do you need to refactor and incorporate those metrics that you want to monitor the performance of? So we used the Microsoft App Insights integration in CE and F&O. Yeah, so in F&O, you've got the App Insights telemetry, and we actually extended the application with custom X++ to call the App Insight telemetry endpoint at certain points so we could report on them. Within CE App Insights is actually a little bit more developed than the F&O telemetry, because you get server-based and UI-based telemetry in the App Insight integration. And also because there was heavy usage of Azure functions, we could leverage App Insights from Azure functions as well.
Okay. Cool.
And basically, because these were all writing to exactly the same App Insight instance, you've suddenly got the ability to report on a transaction from the beginning to the end and monitor its ability. So that was the main source of getting the metrics out, as well as audit trails. We monitored the batch jobs, run execution. We wrote real-time streaming data sets within Power BI that snapshot the batch jobs during the process, so we could see which batch jobs were running. And then outside of Dynamics and reporting those metrics and monitoring those metrics, the main tool we used was something called Executive Automat, which is a scalable performance testing tool. It's an automation tool, so you can use it for ART, automated regression testing, and performance testing. And one of the reasons why we like this was it worked in both F&O and CE. So we tried to identify a tool set that was able to be used within the complete application landscape.
Makes sense.
But then, just quickly going back to tool sets. The other thing you need is you need a way to manipulate your data, because in performance testing, you have to prepare lots of data. So, for example, when we said we were going to performance test picking and packing 100,000 order lines or 80,000 order lines, we need to be able to prepare 80,000 order lines and be able to scale that to because the other thing is you may be doing 80,000 order lines now, but it got to the point where business will turn around to you and say, okay, well, if the system's performing now for go live, will it be performing in a year with a 20% growth? So you then got to be able to easily be able to control your master data and your transactional data.
And maybe just to add to what Gary has said, where executive automats was really amazing wasn't just for performance testing itself, but also for the data staging, because the type of performance test that we wanted to do is to run multiple processes at the same time and see how they impact each other. Now, when we were testing the supply chain peak, where you have shipments being outbounded and invoices being processed, we were looking at about, I believe, 5,000 loads that were being put onto trucks and that were coming back to be invoiced. So where that started is from a sales order that was created in CE, and that needed to move through the entire process in F&O so that it had costs related to it, stock transactions. You can't just bring it in with code, otherwise you don't know whether it's got all of the characteristics that it would have had if it had gone through the entire process. And an automation tool like Executive Automats allowed us to also stage data at these various points in time, so that when we click the button, it's as if you were looking through a little window into the manufacturing floor or onto the warehouse floor, and you could see all of these virtual users running around as if it's that point in time of day. And so I think that was also really helpful as well.
Yeah, my dream here is to use that. I think the application insights, we had Executive Automats, or a friend of the show. We've had them on before as well, I think, a little way back. But I think it's really cool with the application insights. And my dream here is to kind of put that into some visualization, like you want to see on the shop floor. You can see where things are going, like process mining. I know that's more of like process analysis, but you can actually like that visualization of the metrics. And I think going from that huge volume, Gary, of metrics that you push out to the system, and if you enable like retail metrics, then you get a ton more metrics. So the tricky part is like, okay, now I have gigs and gigs of metrics. What do I do with those? I think it's a tricky situation, right? How do I build my rules? How do I set my monitoring on this very big data set that is constant?
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand the customer's needs as well, because it's very easy for a technical person to get hung up in the fact that it took 2 seconds to create a case or to calculate the price on an order. But actually, when you start asking a customer what KPIs they want to measure, normally they're about downtime. If you have a contact center and you've got 100 people in the contact center, everybody works at a different pace. So our performance testing, in my mind, is not about the performance of the UI. It's if I'm a contact center person and I'm placing an order and I click on the save button, the customer wants to know, how long is it until that contact center agent can start answering their next phone call and processing their next order? What is the downtime? Yeah. So we concentrated on the performance, almost like the back end performance of the business process. I don't care that it takes you 3 seconds to find a product. Someone will take 1 second, other people will take 5 seconds. It's how long are you sat there waiting for the system to do something, and how does that affect your revenue?
Yeah.
If you can only process 3 orders in a minute, or 3 orders in a 15-minute window, if you can improve that performance, you can reduce your staff. And from a customer's perspective, we all know it's about revenue. So how much revenue, how much more can someone do? And am I losing any orders because the system doesn't perform?
Yeah, and I mean also is that if I have had a couple of customers who are like, they are on the very edge of what F&O's UI is able to do, because I mean it is a web-based UI. There is a latency. You won't get rid of the latency. I mean, it's about the speed of light and stuff. But I mean, one thing that I think you need to think about as well is that, I mean, F&O is not optimized for being an interactive system. It's a system for crunching data for sending transactions. So if you have that critical UI performance, then you might think that maybe you should have like a UI, another UI that is for the people receiving orders in that case. I mean, maybe that should be like a C# application that's running in locally on your system, which actually bunches all of the orders together and sends them into the system as an integration. In that case, if performance is that critical, that's second critical to you, then maybe you should think about optimizing in another way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we had another interview. I don't think we released it yet with regards to DualWrite and the async capability. So I mean, there are a lot of going back to the original discussion we had. The problem is identifiable in many cases, right? You can identify it. How to solve it, that's a different matter, because now we have so many tools in our toolbox that we need to think about. What is the best applicable use of this tool? CE with async DualWrite might be the best tool there, because maybe CE or a Power App that is very, very like concentrated. You just need to do this, this, and this, and then you're done. That might take away those kinds of strains, as you say, for Johan with F&O. I think this was the first time anyone has ever mentioned light speed in comparison to Dynamics 365. So might be a sales quote.
It was for physics' sake, not for
exactly.
Not for the speed of F&O, actually.
Rarely mentioned in the same sentence.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Carry on, yeah.
No, I was done.
Okay, no, I was just going to say, and that's the problem as well with if you leave performance testing until the end of a project. If you've gone through all your UAT cycles, you're happy your business process is working, and then you stick a few thousand orders through, and it's like, maybe our architecture wasn't right. Maybe we didn't design this thing right, and we have to refactor it all. You know, it's if you start your performance testing early, you can actually reduce the time of the project, because you're designing with performance in mind from the design phase, and cost-wise, you don't have to refactor stuff. So yeah, going back to what you said, Gustav, about if you can start with app insights at the very beginning and start looking. And your developers actually understand what they're looking at from a DualWrite perspective, for example. You know, what happens in DualWrite during the life of an order. You can quickly see.
And I think as well there is, be curious about your customers' processes. I think so many times we focus on just the business process, but we don't ask them about data volumes or how quickly something actually needs to happen. And that also has a major impact on the decisions you make from an architecture point of view. So right from the beginning, it needs to be important to you to understand how your customer is actually going to be using the system.
Yeah, and I think there is a point to what Gary was saying as well in another sense, and that is that if you're pushing that amount of transactions through the system, you will end up in a situation where the sizing needs to be handled. You will end up in a situation where you need to involve Microsoft. And the problem is as soon as you need to contact support, there will be a delay. They will need to be working on things. And especially if you have this amount of transactions, then there will probably need to be someone tweaking the back end and optimizing code in the back end, which means that it will probably take even longer because you have latency when you talk to Microsoft. There is always like a transactional time. So the sooner you figure out that you have performance issues, the sooner you can talk to Microsoft, and the longer the time they have to fix it for you or look into it and help you.
Absolutely.
But usually they have telemetry, and if it's a big enough project, then Fast Track can also help out. I think that one of the main takeaways I have from working with 365 now is that Microsoft wants to know your data, right? They want to have all the telemetry, and they want to be able to fix it. I worked at a 2012 R3 RTM implementation at warehousing, And I know I went to Redmond on a tech conference, and I had a great session with, I don't remember his name. He was part of the warehouse implementation, when they bought Blue Horseshoe and implemented the warehouse. And he said, from our RTM to, I think it was CU7 or something, I don't remember the release, they fixed like 700 bugs and performance issues. Because they brought in an ISV, right? And they only did that with the help of customer telemetry. This was AX12, so they had to go out to customer sites and gather telemetry, right? They couldn't just flick a switch and get it in now. So the more we work with these things and the more we work with telemetry and provide that feedback to Microsoft, it's at least my opinion or my experience now that it's they want it. And maybe not from like a first level support contact, that's a different thing. But when it's these volumes, then you should absolutely ensure that you have some kind of fast track contact or someone to discuss these things with.
And I mean, Fast Track did play a major role on this project with us. And just to give you some insight, our project identified about 42 performance items that could be enhanced, but Microsoft on their own actually implemented over 200 performance enhancements by looking at the analytics and taking both the data that we created as well as the analytics that they have access to identify areas to improve. And I'm sure a lot of that informed improvements that were deployed in the solution as a whole. So if you invest in this, you're actually helping the entire community having a better solution.
Exactly.
Yep.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
One question I have, I think we need to round off shortly, but I think a question I have more of a discussion point is the sizing of the test machines, right? Because up until this point, we've all had LCS, so it's clear. It's like pretty cheap, not so cheap, expensive, super expensive. That's what you get in the tiers, right? But now with PPAC, Johan, maybe a question for you, I'm not sure. It's stated that we will have the same sizing of our environments, right? But it's tied to the licenses. So it might become problematic in an implementation project if you only have a few licenses, but you want to test on a real production set where you have thousands of licenses, but you maybe don't want to buy those thousands of licenses a year ahead. So I think that might be a little challenge we need to resolve going down the line when we move things into PPAC. Or am I missing something? There is no way for us to kind of set the level of scale or the tier in PPAC environments. As far as I know, at least. It's all like auto scale, auto tune.
Exactly. So, but on the other hand, I think you will still be doing like the subscription estimator set. You need to send it in as well. So you will still size it from a transactional perspective.
There might be a timing thing, I think. As you mentioned, Gary, you should always, and that's a key takeaway as well, always consider performance through every phase of the project, right? But when you can do actual controlled performance testing, you want to do that on a near production-like environment, as a tier 5, a performance test environment. But I'm not sure if that's something you can do early in the project if you're doing in PPAC. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's maybe an open question. I'll have to swing it by Microsoft.
I would like to just say one more thing quickly about when performance testing can be done, because I know we want to wrap up, but we've been performance testing with this customer for 2 years. So, and it's not just about performance testing during the project life cycle. We've had an ongoing performance testing, and we performance test every single product update. So we try to do performance testing on product updates where Microsoft themselves have sort of given you an indication that they've improved something or made a significant change in an area. So it's not about automated regression test. It's actually, does the product update affect the performance that we saw this month? So that's an important takeaway as well from this project, was being able to ensure that these, from a CE perspective, the twice yearly, and from F&O, the product updates that you have to push, that you make sure that your system is going to continue to perform on an ongoing basis.
Now everyone who's listening to this is worried, because they were already worried about automated regression testing. And now they know, oh, damn, now I have to do automated performance testing as well. So, yeah. But it's a good thing, because you can't just say, okay, now we're live, everything is fine. Because the volumes grow, the systems grow, and with D365 we get updates, quality updates, things can break, features changes. change the way data flows and processes in the system. In the end, it's just code and data, right? So it's a very good point that
or
you can
Microsoft
never rest.
introduce, or Microsoft change their service protection level limits, and suddenly something that you were doing could stop working. So yeah, there's
busy signal. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process that we try to keep an eye on for customers.
And maybe just a message for customers that are looking at this and saying, okay, do I need to invest in performance testing? I think there's two things that you need to consider is what is your risk of having downtime in your solution? Do you have the type of business that has the opportunity to catch up? Then you might say, okay, I don't need performance testing at the scale that we've been talking about today. I might need something that we've been referring to as volume testing, something that you can do on a smaller environment, but where you can have comparable results that you can compare to each other from one update or from one custom code release to another. Or you could say, what is the cost of not doing this? Is there a massive loss that is around the corner for my business if I fail to invest in performance testing? And in that case, you really need to do a cost analysis and determine what you can afford and make that part of your planning for your ERP implementation. And it might not be the same partner that you're using for both things. You might want someone as an independent advisor to come in and validate the solution that you've paid for, or you might want to make sure that this is on the roadmap that your implementation partner has put together.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Wise words.
Yep.
With those, I think we'll call it a night, a day, depending on where you're listening.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Liese-Marie and Gary, for joining us tonight with this fantastic topic of performance testing. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.